In the light of Russia's decision to remove the Taliban from its list of terrorist organizations, the value and the risks of social media become particularly evident. Terrorism and social media, the abuse of social media, is particularly prevalent. Social media, once hailed as a tool of global democratization, has increasingly been the focus of the complexities it introduces into international relations and the way that it can be used, harnessed for ill. And Russia's recent move is part of this broader diplomatic strategy to recognize the Taliban in Afghanistan. It's about the Kremlin's desperation and about the Taliban's isolation. Whatever the rest of the world wants, the Kremlin is going to do something different, undoubtedly. And this development raises concerns about the role of social media in shaping public opinion, promoting narratives, and even whitewashing the reputations of this regime, that regime, or other groups previously labeled as extremists. And social media platforms are notorious for enabling the rapid dissemination of extremism without oversight. As Hillary Clinton says in her recent appearance on CNN, there should be a lot of things done. We should be, in my view, repealing something called Section 230, which gave platforms on the internet immunity because they were thought to be just pass-throughs, so that they shouldn't be judged for the content that is posted. And Clinton's comments are particularly poignant in this context. Social media is not just an innocent conduit for information. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and others have been central in shaping the perception of groups like the Taliban, often blurring the line between terrorist organizations and legitimate political actors. I would add to this reality TV. You know, for every reality TV actor, there are thousands of particularly younger people who are ensnared, enraptured, who want to emulate that individual, who want to see the fake as real, who want to see the planned as unplanned, the hard work as a diversion, and in the same way as I think it's wrong to call participants in reality TV contestants, or say, oh, these are ordinary people who can get back to their ordinary life once the show is over. So too, I think, again, it's all about responsibility, and social media must take responsibility for what it does, because even if it's ephemeral, even if it's transitory, it's still central to our modern life. And social media, reality TV, these two things are buttressed and bolstering each other. And we say, oh, that's the black web over there, but the black web invades our everyday life. It's very difficult to say what is right, what is wrong, when you're constantly fed a diet of opinion. And this blurring of the line between what is good and what is bad, between what is legitimate and what is illegitimate. Clinton's concerns about Section 230 highlight the necessity of increased regulation. But that regulation, as devised by people, by twits like Nadine Dorries, is just incompetent and equally harmful. The immunity clause in Section 230 allows social media companies to avoid legal responsibility for harmful or misleading content posted on their platforms. In a world where the Taliban can be delisted as a terrorist organization while promoting their cause through digital means, while disseminating their hate, the stakes are higher than ever. A failure to regulate means allowing social media to serve as a battleground for dangerous ideas, potentially legitimizing extremist movements. Simply because something is presented as fun doesn't mean it's right. Simply because something is presented as legitimate doesn't mean it's actually right. And we need to take control of our own understanding of what we see. Clinton's broader argument is captured in her book, Something Lost and Something Gained, where she discusses the impact of unmoderated content, particularly on vulnerable populations like children, and she emphasizes the psychological effects, noting that social media content increases the presence of anxiety and depression in children. She's right. But the solution, I don't think, is about regulation. The solution is about education. Her insight parallels the larger conversation about global security. If social media is capable of profoundly affecting children's mental health, imagine its power to affect political and social narratives on a global scale. Yes. So how do we deal with that? Not with regulation, but with education. In the same way as we deal with out of control reality TV. Ryland the other day was saying that he can imagine a situation where people are going to be encouraged to die on TV. I'm afraid I think he's right. It's for Russia, removing the Taliban from its terrorist list might be seen as a pragmatic move, but the role of social media in shaping and promoting such decisions cannot be ignored. In fact, it's social media that amplifies the Taliban's claims to political legitimacy, echoing Clinton's warning, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Telegram or TikTok, whatever you are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose control. It's not about control. Control is in the hands of education. We can't regulate everything. This loss of control is felt not only in the digital sphere, but also how governments and nations, including Russia, interact with formerly vilified groups. Clinton's suggestion to take phones out of schools while focusing on the mental health of children also hints at a broader social issue, the unregulated presence of social media in daily life, where we often underestimate its influence. I would say keep phones in schools so that children learn how to use phones. She says, we've conducted a big experiment on ourselves and particularly our kids, and I think the evidence is in. No, it's not. If children's minds are vulnerable to the effects of unfiltered content, which they are, what about entire populations exposed to narratives that redefine political realities? The Taliban, for instance, has adeptly utilized social media to reshape its image, moving from a feared militant group to a government entity seeking international recognition. Ultimately, we evaluate Russia's latest decision and the broader implications of groups like the Taliban being removed from terrorist lists. The value of social media as a tool for both good and harm is undeniable, but we need to evaluate these things, and we need to say, do we regulate or do we educate? Hillary Clinton's call for action, especially at a national legislative level, rings true. At least in part. We need national action, and sadly our Congress has been dysfunctional when it comes to assessing these threats. The dysfunction is not unique to the United States. It reflects a global challenge of regulating the digital sphere while preserving freedom of speech and security in an increasingly interconnected world. But if we recognize we cannot regulate on an international basis, then what can we do? We can educate. And we're not doing enough of that, because instead of educating, we're saying, you aren't allowed to bring your phones into the classroom because phones are evil, phones are bad. You can have your phones when you're old enough to drink. Well, what's the point then? We need to have the phones in the classroom. We need to have the social media in the classroom so that we can teach children how to use these things, how to use this tool. We can't eradicate it. But we should also be standing up to countries like Russia that recognize the Taliban as not being some sort of terrorist organization. Of course it is. You only have to look at the Taliban and look at the way they treat women. Shocking.